Hello everyone. Welcome back. I'm welcoming myself back actually because I've been away for about 3 days. Been busy with other things. Two of the things is one birthdays and the other one my computer. Oh my goodness. I've spent 2 days trying to sort things out. Something went wrong. Anyway, at the end, I obviously just had to take it to a repair shop. Paid an arm and a leg for it, but anyway, they repaired it. I was trying to figure it out myself. Oh my goodness. Finally, I can get back to posting a video. So I was thinking, I was 3 days ago I was going to post on different subjects, different topics, and anyway everything has been such a hectic day that I have to collect my thoughts at the beginning. But I was thinking of all these things that have been happening at the so-called mutiny with the war, Russia and Ukraine and so on. Then I was reading and listening to different things. Then the Pope, apparently, who is trying to is trying to punish? No. What is the right word? Well, they are investigating or doing something to Bishop Strickland, the only one who went to Los Angeles and led a prayer there against the whatever was going on there with the Dodgers. Then I also heard today that the Pope has sent an envoy to Zelensky to talk about peace, and then he's going to go to Russia. I don't know what the Pope is doing, trying to, I commend it because at least there's something, but I mean, what is he going to do with Zelensky and with President Putin? I don't know. Forgive me, but it seems to me by all the things that he's doing to the Catholic clergy that I speak as a traditional Catholic, not as an anti-Catholic. He seems to me to be very much a sort of a tin pot Argentinian dictator. I don't know. I don't even want to go there. But anyway, also I was reading several articles. You will see this is, as usual, a prologue to what I'm trying to say. YouTube is actually in my feed there. They keep sending me actually very interesting things. I don't have a problem with YouTube yet. I hope I never will. They haven't punished me for anything yet or anything. So, but I'm getting a lot of very, very interesting talks and lectures and things. And one of the things that came up in my feed was Enoch Powell from everyone in England, Great Britain, the United Kingdom, knows who Enoch Powell was, a politician from the 60s and 70s, before that, but anyway. For those of you in America or perhaps even Australia, Canada, he was a tremendously intelligent man, well-read, extremely intelligent. He was professor of classics, Greek, and all kinds of things. He fought in the Second World War. He's very, very accomplished. He died, I think, in 1998, something like that, in his late 80s, perhaps. And but he's well known. He's most famous because in the 1960s he gave a speech in Birmingham that was dubbed by the newspapers as the Rivers of Blood speech. He was talking about immigration, and at that time, in the late 60s, there was a flood of immigration, and he was talking about what people are talking about today, more quietly, but in those days you could speak openly about the fact that all these tremendous amounts of people coming over and so on. He had a problem with that. He had a problem with so much immigration. That is in the late 60s. And he gave this speech that, as I said, the press dubbed it the Rivers of Blood speech, which, if you don't really know where he got the idea from, you will think that, okay, we are all going to end up killing each other, rivers of blood. In fact, the quote is from Virgil, from the Aeneid, book 6, 86 to 87. And he is certainly talking about war. The quote is, "As I look ahead, I am filled with foreboding. As a Roman, I see the river Tiber foaming with much blood." That was the line. Okay, but it was, as the press started saying, "Oh, rivers of blood, rivers of blood." Anyway, I don't want to talk about Enoch Powell as such, but my thought, and then I watched several other things, interviews with him on television, and then debates at that time between Enoch Powell and from the Conservative Party, and then from members of the Labour Party. And when you listen to these debates, you realize the difference of those politicians of yesteryear with those politicians of today, because they were highly educated, they could debate a point philosophically, they didn't sort of start punching each other, they could talk, they could debate. And the BBC was still a responsible organization, and you had these fantastic debates. So I watched quite a lot of those, and I watched one with Tony Benn. And Tony Benn is, for those of you, everybody in England knows Tony Benn too, but for those of you abroad, Tony Benn was a member of the Labour Party. He was a socialist, but he had been an aristocrat. He was a viscount. His name was Anthony Wedgwood Benn. He was born in 1925. Again, he died in his late 80s, perhaps in the early 2000s, I'm not too sure. But he was from the company, from the porcelain company of Wedgwood. Anyway, he gave it all up in order to fight for workers. But he was sincere. He wasn't just putting on a show. You can see throughout his life, he truly believed it. And if you see these debates between him and Enoch Powell, they both agreed on not wanting to take England, Great Britain, into the European Union, or the European Economic Community, as it was then called, both from the right and from the left, against Britain becoming a member of the European Union, what became of the European Union. And so I'm watching all these debates, and I'm saying, my goodness, we don't have anything like that anymore. What happened? And then I started thinking about great men. I was also reading one of the lives of Plutarch. I think it was Demosthenes, something like that. I think it was him. Anyway, one of the lives where he tells a story, I was laughing. I was panicking because of my computer, that I had to sort it out because I wanted to post some videos, this and that. And I am reading this, and he kept me smiling. He tells the story of a senator. This is about the 1st century AD, I suppose. And of a senator in the Senate. He had been there for a long time. He was, as it were, to put it in modern terms, up for re-election, something like that. And of course everyone knew that he was going to win. He had been there for a long time. He was established, he was respected, and so on. But a young man, an upstart, wanted to challenge him for the post of senator. And of course everyone kind of laughed because, you have to pay your dues and wait your turn and so on. But he insisted that, yes, he wanted to run against this established senator. The senator could have just been kind with his words, just say, well, yes, I acknowledge, that very soon you're very capable and very soon you... But no, he decided to... He loved the sound of his own voice, and so he got up in the Senate and he started saying, what does a young man know of life, and so on. They're not ready, they're not prepared, they have to wait. And everyone was agreeing, and okay. But then he, instead of stopping, he went on and made a mistake. Instead of continuing talking about what does a young man know, he moved on to what can a young man do, which is a different thing. What, he said, pray tell, what can a man, not yet 23, what can he do? And the young upstart got up and said, Senator, go home and bet your wife or I'll do it for you. How did you recover from that? Anyway, that was one of my... it kept me smiling. Anyway, and then I continued thinking about great men. And thinking about the fact that the Pope is sending this... bishop or whoever to talk to the two sides in the war. I was reminded of Cervantes, the author of Don Quixote, who was... Do you know anything about Cervantes? This was quite a life, He fought at Lepanto against the Muslims, we used to say the Turks, invasion. He lost his right arm. Then when he was going back to Spain, he was captured by the Muslims. There was a center in Algiers that had pirates whose job was to get Christians for slavery, for the slavery trade, and they would make them slaves. And Cervantes was actually a slave for 5 years. There was an order in the Catholic Church called the Trinitarians. I don't know whether they exist today. They were founded in the 12th century, I believe it was in France, in order to rescue Christians from slavery from the Arabs, from the Muslims, I think. And they would have to pay ransom if they wanted to free them. And so Cervantes, they got the money to pay his ransom, and Cervantes told them to ransom someone else, actually very generous of him. Anyway, he stayed for a little bit longer, and finally he was freed after 5 years of slavery. And then he needed a job, And he had a wife, and he had his sister who was a widow, and his sister's children, and, well, quite a lot of other people in his family for whom he had to provide. So he got a job. I don't know whether it was as a tax collector. It was a collector of revenue. I think it was for the Armada, actually. Anyway, oh my goodness, he wasn't very good at balancing books. And he was arrested, convicted, sent to jail for embezzling funds. I believe he pled guilty to it, but he tried to explain, look, you have all your family practically starving. You are the only provider, and you have all these monies here. Okay, it is quite possible. We are all weak at some times. If you have no money at all, but nevertheless you are collecting money, it is quite possible that one day you might say, well, I'll just borrow a little bit here, I'll put it back. There is a difference between being a criminal and being in such need that you just kind of explain to yourself that you're going to borrow it for just a week and then you'll... Anyway, he was sent to jail, convicted. And that is where he wrote Don Quixote, in jail. It's quite an amazing story. These people, St. John of the Cross also wrote all that beautiful poetry in jail. He was in jail. Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, so all these great men who did so much for other fellow human beings, or for their country, or for their society, and they all ended up in jail. And what do we have now? Okay, so while I was watching this, the Enoch Powell and Tony Benn, I went into the history a little bit of great figures of certainly the from the 1960s, politicians. And I realized that the person elected in 1970, Ted Heath, who was a conservative, and he was the one who took Great Britain into the European Union, the European Economic Community, without a referendum, with nothing. He just took us there. He practically supplicated to Europe, for England to... I keep saying England, for the UK to be accepted. And I see him as a crucial figure, actually. Normally people talk about Tony Blair, who changed the way we do politics in the UK. But I think Ted Heath was actually much more important, because I see what happened here was we're beginning to change from great men, great eccentric men, well-read, brilliant men. What you could agree with them, disagree with them, but they were great men in their eccentricity and the way they, their speeches, the way they talked, and now with Ted Heath, I find that something changed. It was the beginning of the bureaucrats taking power. That is why I see a change here in this person. He was a colorless man, no charisma, no nothing, just your typical bureaucrat. And I see that there is a break here with his election, the election of this man in 1970. And so we have the great Tony Benn, the socialist, Enoch Powell, the great conservative, so many more. And then Ted Heath, no charisma, no nothing, a bureaucrat kind of thing. And we ended up where, I'll skip Tony Blair, we end up where with Boris Johnson. There is a degeneration of, if not talent, because Boris Johnson is well read, he is intelligent. I see the difference in morals, in the lack of honor, in the lack of sense of duty. To the politicians of today, where they just seem to be there as an entry post for what they will do afterwards. You know, they will go to be chairman of this or on the board of that. In other words, they're using politics as a means to grow themselves in power and so on. Whereas before it was more to be there as a statesman. So that is what I thought. The likes of Enoch Powell or Tony Benn, then this watering down of honor and duty with Ted Heath. Although Ted Heath was a reasonable man, he knew the difference between right and wrong, to the people we have governing today. Help! What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because I don't know. We'll probably have... oh, by the way, I didn't say anything about American politicians or Australian... I know the Australian Prime Minister promised when he was in opposition to do everything he could, if he got into power, to help Assange. He hasn't. And I'm not going to talk about American politicians, only to say, since I talked about the Pope, if you look at Tony or Anthony Blinken and the Pope, they have the same eyes. The same eyes. Look at them. See if it tells you something. I mean, I don't know what I'm getting into here, but every time I look at each one of them, there is something about their eyes, and they're both the same. Anyway, we are going to have an election in England probably next year. I don't know who to vote for. I can't vote for the Conservative Party because of what they have been doing. I can't really vote for the Labour Party because the leader of the Labour Party is actually much, much more of a globalist than, or perhaps as much, but than the Conservatives. Is the same thing. There is no difference. There is no one else, no other political party that has a chance. So, you know, the question that we often ask ourselves, is it better just not to vote? And not voting doesn't solve anything, really. But voting for someone that you don't agree with, I have a moral dilemma there. I don't know what to do. Can you let me know in the comments? Can we start a little conversation about what to do? Because in the United States, you might have Trump, or you might have Trump against Biden or whoever, or against Robert Kennedy. I don't know. There seems to be at least a chance of a difference there. Here in England, no difference whatsoever. What do we do? Help! Okay, I'll leave you for today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.